what are you all willing to give up? Because this is about white people giving stuff up, right? If we're going to rebalance things, that means you got to give things up. What are you willing to give up? I'm sure you're not here saying, well, I don't need an A in all of my classes, because maybe if I don't get an A, this black or brown student will then get a higher grade, and then they'll get the job that I really want, but they probably deserve. I don't know. What are you willing to give up? Because that's what this calls for white people to do, right? Not just talk about it.
I don't think it should be about like giving something up. I feel like it should just be doing more to support everyone.
Like, look here, let me say it like this. It's like you have a pie. I'm going to go up here for a hot minute. So you have a pie, and there are only so many pieces of the pie, okay? You can't make you can make the pie maybe a little bit larger, but really, there's a way in which this is zero sum. And you might say, well, but the economy and so on, it's not really zero sum because we can grow the economy to an unlimited way. But the fact is there's only one earth and there's a level at which it's zero sum. So there's a way in which if you're going to bring more people down to eat the pie, right? Like if you all have a pie and you're eating it, you want to bring these two people over to eat it with you. And then you decide, oh, well, we're going to bring a whole bunch of other people too. You're going to have to either make the pie bigger or you're only going to have a little bit. Well, you're never going to get the same piece. And once you invite them over, you don't have the same size piece. So now the key is there's some serious inequality in this country. So then my question to you is, well, so what are you willing to give up? Because you're going to have to give some stuff up. As you already have, if we've globalized. The United States is giving stuff up. Part of the reason this guy right here, Caleb's so poor, is because his region where he lives, the jobs left that region and they went down to Mexico and they went over to China. And they're no longer in his region. So more people, the Chinese and the Mexicans and elsewhere in the Caribbean, they started eating from the pie. So his people already gave something up. So what are you willing to give up, you guys? Because white people, if you all want to talk about white privilege, you got to answer this question. Because in the end, it's part of it, man.
I think you have to be willing to give up, like, however much bigger your slice of pie is. Like, if my slice of pie, if I have half the pie and Max only has a third, we have to average that so it's fair.
So when you get your first job, if you don't get the raise that you think you want or deserve or whatever, and it goes to a guy, a brown or black-skinned person, and you're just going to be okay with that.
Well, you also need to remember, like, self-worth, too.
Okay.
Like, when it comes to, like, job raises, like, if you think you deserve that job raise, they're going to give you that job raise.
I think the difference is not necessarily that it's, like, giving things up. I think there's a sense of, like, knowledge and, like, advocacy that needs to be done by people that are white. Like, I'm Hispanic and white. So it's, like, giving a piece of, like, I agree to a certain extent. Like, if I have more of that pie because of my heritage, then there's some type of, like, advocacy that I have to do for people who are underprivileged. So, like, for example, like, in Caleb's instance, just because he's white and impoverished, like, he has a better opportunity of comparable. Like, you can't compare him to somebody who's of color and wealthy because there's already, like, a discrepancy there. You would have to compare him to somebody who is colored and at the same level as him. Like, he's going to have that advantage of being white.
I know you're saying, like, you have to compare apples to apples, right? But that's not what we're doing in the white privilege conversation. In the white privilege conversation, we are comparing white people to black and brown people. That is what we do. And that's what happens. And that's what white people are expected. That's what we do. That's the message. And black and brown people use this as a way, definitely use it. Yo, Manali and Max, man. Back me up right here. Black and brown people will use this as part of the conversation as a way to uplift themselves or to just, like, hold white people down sometimes. And I'm saying, yo, we got to be very careful about doing that. Would you agree with that? Do you think that? The way the word just gets thrown about like it's like nothing, like it's assumed?
I think, okay, so when it comes to white privilege, I think there is an assumption that like, okay, like white people don't realize the privilege that they have. I think now we've come to like,
Which we can
appro-
agree is not like Caleb. We're going to look at Caleb and be like, Caleb, damn it, you just don't understand the privileges that
right.
you have.
I feel like Caleb understands like, okay, he's white, like, and then like if he's impoverished, I think he still understands, or like when it comes to somebody who's a person of color, is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay, so a person of color versus like a white person, like he has more of an opportunity, like that starting line for him. He's
Okay.
closer to that starting line
Okay.
than somebody who is like black or brown.
Okay, all right. Yeah. By the way, that wasn't correct or incorrect. It's because we haven't had that conversation yet. We haven't decided what is or isn't correct.
I think an important word to also bring into this conversation would be intersectionality,
Uh-huh.
which has to do with no matter like what or like what identities you hold, if you consider the racial hierarchy that is present in our country, if you add like a race of color on top of that, there's been historical and present disadvantage.
Okay, so let me say then, so the idea right here is intersectionality. What it means is that you cannot just pick out one variable. Wait, where am I? Okay, you cannot just pick out one variable. Like, life is too complicated. Like, Alana is not, what you see of Alana is not who Alana is. Alana is so many things. Alana is your background, your experiences, your gender, your sexual orientation, your class, where you grew up, your parents, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, we can't know you unless we know all these things, the way they intersect together. And so that's kind of essentially, in a way, what we're getting at here and what you're saying.
One thing I noticed is at the start of the class, you said let's only talk about white privilege and not about the classes, like class bias and all that. But then you brought up like the concept of the pie. You can't talk about white privilege and about the pie without bringing in class.
Yeah.
Like they both are interconnected when you talk about the pie. So like I want you to either backtrack that or talk more about it, give
Yeah.
more context.
Well, dude, it's people like you that make my job difficult. Yeah, look,
I love it.
yeah, okay. So here's the thing. What are you clapping for him for, dude? You should be clapping for me, man. All right, so look, the thing is, when I started, I didn't want to jump into the class thing right away. I wanted to really stay as much as possible just on race. Because I didn't want to start with intersectionality, because that just takes us off somewhere. Because the fact is, when we talk about white privilege, what we are always talking about is just, we are thinking whiteness, just whiteness, bro. So I want to try to stay there in that. Yes, ma'am.
I liked the question that you asked earlier about what are we willing to give up, because I don't think it's necessarily just about a racial privilege. I think it's about any privilege you have.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you want things to be equal, then
Yeah.
you have to recognize when you're unfairly benefiting. Like, I remember my mom said to me, like, when she was dating a police officer, like, if you ever get in trouble, here's his number, text him. I said, no, I'm not going to text him. I'm not going to benefit from nepotism like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I
No,
already
you put one of those, I support the PBA on the back of your car.
There are just instances where I have certain privileges that I can choose to not participate in systems. Like, if you're wealthy enough to not support companies that use poor labor practices, like I choose to buy less and to buy more
Okay.
ethical.
Okay.
Because I have the privilege to do that.
So what do you think about black and brown people with privilege who don't do that?
I believe anyone with any kind of privilege should evaluate what they can do to make the playing field equal.
Okay,
it
so
doesn't
the-
just have to be race.
So Alana, then, that means that, what's your name again?
Sabrina?
Sabrina is saying, what it tells me is, hey y'all, when we start talking about white privilege and it's just about this whiteness thing, and we get the intersectionality, bring the intersectionality in a certain way, because we also got to talk about everybody who has a certain amount of privilege. Because the way you laid that, Alana, man, the way you laid that out, it was like that, and I'm like, okay, I got it. And it's true, for the way you laid that intersectionality out, you're on point, and we gotta roll it back and look at it and critique it, which is what we're trying to do here.